And I think right here, Hikori are either going to pick up their mid or their 4. I think that's where they really need to make a decision. Personally, I would try to pick their mid laner here because you are going to take away even further from Gunner's pool. Instead, they're going to go for their 4, which again is all right. I think it is a little bit more telegraphed what their draft is trying to do. The easiest thing that really plays out for me is that this is going to be a Bloodseeker carry, a 5 Gyro, an offlane Dawnbreaker, and a 4 Lion. But there is that flexibility where do you really want to play safe lane Bloodseeker into Pangolier, where of course that matchup is terrible for Pango, but can Bloodseeker actually end up killing him is a different question because we definitely see Pangos, especially once they get the Aghanim Shard, they will sit and they will wait in that roll up. You don't get the silence effect anymore because you time it on that. It doesn't really feel as fantastic as some people have definitely valued it. And I really like this early TA pick from Zoomers. Of course, this is going to go into Gunner's hands, but get it before they're going to be able to ban out your hero pool. And this is perfect. This is a really good TA game right now. All of the heroes on Hikori are not very naturally tanky. They don't have good stat gain aside from level 1, more or less. They don't really itemize either into that armor. You're going to see some really around the bank itemization for a lot of these heroes because this TA is definitely going to run at you. Not just that, Zoomers now get 2 bans to really secure this matchup versus Analog.
And outside of, I guess, maybe the Rocket Barrage, Hikori don't have a lot of quick hitting attacks that are going to be able to sort of burn through that refraction as well. So your TA may be able to last even longer than sort of usual in the middle of some of those fights. So something Hikori are going to have to be a little bit worried with. And now, as you said, Zoomers can take further shots at just whittling away at Analog's pool. Meanwhile, for Hikori themselves, well, you are still looking, presumably, at an Envy hero. Now, you mentioned that TA really does have to go to Gunner. I mean, technically speaking, they could run it for Envy, but that just seems a little unlikely. But Hikori are not so sure. And they ban out the Lina to start off Phase 3, so they're maybe thinking about some alternative scenarios. As unlikely as they may seem right now, they're not ruling out anything.
Yeah, and of course, Eternal Envy, really good core player, really good position 1. TA was a staple of the previous patch, especially in that position 1. But do you really need to take out the Gunner Lina? It's a tough call, and that's where maybe Hikori are a little bit privy to why this TA is getting picked up. If 4 Zoomers are going for the safe lane TA versus Dawnbreaker, I can only imagine that it's because not only is Dawnbreaker going to be playing in your face when it comes to those creep waves, but it's also very low hits. It's really a lot of her damage coming, especially from the Q in that 3 like hit burst, that combo. But that's where I don't think they'd want to lane versus the Celestial Hammer. That tick would be the spell to actually get rid of that refraction. So even though they're banning out Gunner heroes, I feel like this is giving a little bit of a free reign to Envy if he wanted to go for some of his more specialty safe laners. And that's where it does become a little bit easier for Zoomers to ban out, and they're banning out the really active mid laners. We might see a tiny ban coming up here, even though, again, I don't think Gunner really minds any matchup right now. I think banning out, in fact, the Kunkka and the Lina are both heroes that Analog would be really happy to play, but that's where Hikori might know something a little bit more than we do. But these bans are definitely a little bit confusing for me, at least.
Yeah, the overall strategy behind it is something that we can kind of glean, but the reasoning is maybe not quite as straightforward. But either way, we are through it. 4 Zoomers removing the Mars and the Storm Spirit here on the back end of this draft, and we'll see what it is Hikori now have planned. We're assuming that this is a hero for Analog.
Razor?
Okay, the Ember. All right. That's a hero Analog certainly knows how to play, but it doesn't really make Hikori's lineup the tankiest or most durable in the world here. I feel like that Dawnbreaker is going to be relied upon pretty heavily if things go south.
Yeah, and this slots in the rest of your lineup. It really does feel like they're very rigid now on Hikori. They can't swap around their lanes very much if they aren't happy with what they end up getting. And picking Ember Spirit when you don't have last pick is a huge risk, because if 4 Zoomers really want to, they could Huskar you right here, and you couldn't do anything about it. You would just have to eat the lane. Of course, I think Gunner is a man of culture. I don't think he'd necessarily do that to Analog. I think he likes those skill-based matchups, and TA versus Ember Spirit is definitely one of the higher skills. Of course, after the lane, TA does run away with it a little bit. Ember never naturally has enough armor to stay in a lot of those prolonged fights, especially if he gets hit up with that meld. But that's where it does feel like Four Zoomers are still really hard missing that Eternal Envy hero. Of course, prove us wrong. Okay, prove us
All
wrong.
right.
Is it going to be an Envy Tiny or a Gunner Tiny? It's going to be an Envy TA. Okay.
So Envy on the TA, presumably, what, Gunner on the Tiny, and, oh, Moo on the Treant Protector. Okay. That's not quite what I was expecting, but Core Tree while Husky will take the Pango.
Yeah, it's. I think it's because of the Bloodseeker lane, which I don't even think they're getting because Ardio is actually on the gyrocopter. Man, everybody has swapped around because now we've got Gardic on the Dawnbreaker. Man, this draft just took a interesting turn. Of course, Hikori were always able to do this. They were the team that definitely had more flexibility, but is Envy going to have a good time versus Almisho in Vitali? And I guess now the Hammer's not playing in his lane, so it will feel a little bit better, but man, this draft has just taken a very strange turn. But I think the reason they want Moo in that top lane is because if there is going to be a melee position 5, that being the Dawnbreaker and Gardic, you're going to want that Leaf Seed. You're going to want to make that easy punish on him. The only issue is Dawnbreaker is a really robust hero. It's really easy for Gardic to stand in front of Rodeo in this lane. And I don't really see too much pressure coming out. I think Gardic is one of those position 5s that is a little bit prone to feeding, especially tactically feeding, to make sure his gyrocopter never runs out of supplies. But I don't know. It really is a toss-up. I really don't know who pulled ahead in this draft.
And the only thing I can see there with Moo and Z-Freak in the lane together is maybe the slow from the Nature's Grasp could set up for some sort of arrow play, and they could try to make a move off the back of that, but not really sure if they will have the damage between the two of them. The Treant obviously hits hard. We all know the sort of physical damage that he has at his disposal early on, but not sure if that's going to be enough to really land those hits. So we'll see. If it doesn't really turn into an aggressive lane, I mean, ET, how much do you value significant amounts of lane farm on your 4 Treant Protector? That's a little bit of a weird one.
Yeah, and I think it makes a little bit more sense because you do see this Ember Spirit mid, so you know that there isn't going to be the threat of a hero like the Leshrac, for example, where you aren't going to be losing your towers in that very quick fashion. So this does allow Moo to go for a much slower skill build. You're not going to see many points in that living armor. I'm imagining he's going to not necessarily go for the 4-4-0, but something among those lines, because he really needs to rely on his own damage. When you're laning with this Mirana, of course, Mirana is a very stable hero when it comes to getting something out of your offlane. But if those arrows aren't necessarily hitting, you only have a slow lane, that's where you might see even Gardic going in front of Ardio, just tanking a bunch of those arrows. And looking at Gardic, he's got 720 base health. It is a very tanky hero at level 1, something that I don't really think 4 Zoomers can get through. They're really going to need to chip down hard on Gardic, who can even heal himself once he has points in that Luminosity. I'm more interested to see what Gardic's skill build is going to be than anything from 4 Zoomers.
Yeah, fair enough. His build is going to kind of determine a lot of how that lane will go. You mentioned Gardic's ability on the Dawnbreaker, just sort of stand in front and be that buffer to let Ardio take the lane. So if he can't do that, then we're talking about a different scenario, but it feels like Gardic knows in this scenario exactly what his role is supposed to be. So I would not expect too much in the way of early mistakes there. As we do get back into the game, had a brief pause at the start there for DC to player, but we're back in, we're ready to go, and this ward from 4 Zoomers is a little bit further in from the edge of the cliff than you would normally expect. I don't really know if that was intentional or not, but that's a bit of an interesting one. Maybe if a sentry's thrown down in the river, it might miss, or maybe that was a complete accident. Not really sure, but that exact position is not where we normally expect to see the ward placed.
Yeah, it makes a little bit more sense when you do consider that everybody gets their ward dewarded in the mid lane. It's a race against time, especially versus a team like Hikori, who is known to smoke out of their base, trying to get early plays, early vision, and with a pretty active level 1, I'm surprised they aren't going for a more offensive position, but maybe their item builds being a little bit greedier than some other heroes. They don't really want to force themselves into those early engagements. But as long as this ward doesn't get killed and sees at least one rune, Gunner's going to be happy. All he really cares about is seeing the high ground and seeing the rune.
Yeah, it does still clip that south side rune spawn, so it's a little out of the ordinary, but it still gets the job done. Meanwhile, Gardic on a bit of a mission right now. You see him moving into the jungle. Does he actually block? Okay, yeah.
Nice.
Just making sure no sort of sneaky plays there for someone like the Tiny. TP's back to the lane, directly into Z-Freak, who had already thrown the arrow out, though. So he takes out the range creep, as Mirana's are wont to do. And, I don't know, Gardic maybe could have taken a little bit of damage there had Z-Freak sort of seen that coming, but it's just going to settle into that normal. Does he get it?
Yep.
He's going for it.
Z-Freak's going for it.
Yeah. That one's going to be pretty simple. He even threw the sentry down himself here.
It's just really smart. It's really heads-up play, too. Of course, it's nothing special, but you always love to see it from Z-Freak, especially in lanes where Mu is definitely going to struggle. And that leaves RDO. Oh, he wasn't able to drag the creep behind his tower. So this is just going to push hard into Mu. Because Z-Freak, at the same time, also tanked for his creep wave. So this is ForZoomer's just able to pull this really hard into the Treant Protector. And for a level-starved lane, once they get level 2, 3, that's where they actually have to be really cautious with their lives on the Hikori side.
Yeah, Gardic is going to obviously do his best, but there's only so much he can really contribute right now. But, I don't know. At least RDO was able to clean that up behind the tower, but now is when things get a little bit more interesting with the lane equilibrium. So, yeah, Mu and Z-Freak. I mean, we were wondering about how much aggressive potential that they would have, but with some of these early moves, getting aggressive really isn't in the cards for them is what I was going to say, but they do try to make the play onto Gardic. He was hit by that Nature's Grasp for maybe like one tick. If Mu puts it a little bit further to the right, I think that they can get more damage in, but that is still, honestly, I think just going to be fine. If you're ForZoomers, you're just really happy with the way that this lane could play out for you. You see that creep wave already starting to push forward as top lane. Husky going to get himself caught out. Elmisho able to get that kill for the Hikori side as they draw first blood.
Yeah, and really in this top lane, I didn't expect Vitaly to have as good of a time as he's had so far. And maybe it's just them knowing a little bit more than we do, but Vitaly already has an earn up for Envy in this lane. If they get one more kill, then Envy really has to be scared of walking up, and with his skill build as well, he's gone for the level 1 meld, so no points in Sideblade yet either. This is really unfortunate for him.
Well, down bot, move.
Yeah, the dive.
They hit him up. Gardic may pay for this, though, but Z-Freak has no Star Storm, so the damage is not great. He's going to try for the arrow at point-blank range. He does manage to get it, so that is going to be a nice trade-off, but that is core 4 support in Hikori's favor there, so they take down Mu. Z-Freak really didn't leave the lane for long, but the 2v1 favoring Hikori in that scenario, but now RDO's got to be a little bit careful. Mu respawns, trying to push in with the slow from the grasp. Did he get the arrow? He's going to fake it out a couple of times, and actually not going to go for it. I think they caught vision of Gardic there on the backside, so maybe you go all out and you still get the kill onto RDO, but with Gardic there, it turns into maybe a more complicated scenario than they wanted. So they'll just back themselves away. Mu's back in the lane and didn't really miss out on too much time, but that death is unfortunate for ForZoomers.
Yeah, and not just that, whenever Z-Freak went for that rotation into the Ancient Camp, which is what started off that entire play, he finds that there is no Ancient Camp. They haven't been spawning since the 0-minute mark. There's nothing since the Horn, and that's been a really unfortunate situation for him. That's a big reason why they get Z-Freak on these ranged heroes, is to stack up for Envy and Gunner, and it's just not working out for him right now. But
RDO, they hit him with the arrow. Gardic's coming in with the Starbreaker trying to create that separation, but Z-Freak is still on the hunt. Starstorm comes through, leaps his way forward. RDO taken down, and Gardic will fall as well as Mu's able to win his 1v1 in the actual lane proper. So, I mean, ForZoomers, that one was just so clean for them. It starts as sort of a 2v1 onto RDO. It breaks up into separate fights. Z-Freak wins his. Mu's able to handle business against still a relatively low-level Dawnbreaker, and they are really back in the driver's seat in this bottom lane as we have Elmisho unfortunately disconnecting.
Yeah, and that's where, do you have the time to make these stacks now if you are Elmisho? Because Elmisho, has been stuck fighting up with Vitaly for a while here, and of course, it's been at the expense of Eternal Envy, not letting them get a little bit too far ahead in this lane. And Vitaly, of course, sitting at the top of the CS, is having a very nice time, but there is not that much infrastructure built up right now for the Gyrocopter. If he has to make that early rotation out, he's going to be slow farming the jungle. He's not on Dire either, so you don't have those easy avenues where you can hit 2 or 3 camps at the same time. You really just have the triangle somewhere that you still have your Ember Spirit playing. So he has to really just bunker down in the bottom lane, and it's very dangerous. I think one rotation from Analog could change everything. That can make the lane very difficult for Mu and Z-Freak to ever show their faces again, but we still need to get that level 6 on the Ember Spirit, something that he's struggling a little bit versus Gunnar. Gunner's done a really good job in the mid lane, at least getting a few more denies away from Analog than I think he really has any business getting.
Yeah, double-digit denies for that Tiny leaves him about a half level ahead of Analog at the moment. So that is very rare, especially in the middle lane, to have sort of double-digit denies at this stage. But Analog will get there eventually, as you said, and once he hits that level 6, that is going to be really the big play. The only thing is, once he hits level 6, if he goes directly in for the Remnants, that is going to leave him with no points up in the Searing Chains. So either he makes the rotation just based solely on his nuke damage, or the rotation waits until maybe level 7 if he can get a point up into that route. But you got a bit of a trade-off either way. If you wait a little longer, you are giving 4Zoomers maybe an opportunity to make their move first with the Tiny, whereas if you go early, you're relying on everyone else to have that lockdown to actually secure a kill. So we'll see what the decision is there. Husky asking if we're ready to go. El Misho did get back into the server, but we haven't gotten the all clear from them just yet in terms of resuming.
Yeah, I was just going to say myself, I wonder why we're still paused, and Husky definitely calls them out for a sec here.
There
No
we go.
Calais or anything, but yeah, glad they're ready to go here. And I think that's where Hikori right now, with how bottom lane is going, you even see Gardic not TPing in at the tower, trying to give Artio some more of that solo XP. We need to see how Hikori can turn their big success in the top lane into a big success in the bottom lane. Because right now, I do definitely feel like 4Zoomers are getting away with everything they want. You even see Z-Freak feeling comfortable enough to steal another creep wave away. And of course, this is free farm for Artio, but it's also a lot of time. And I do like this play from Gardic. Again, there's no stacks right now for Envy. This TA is still not having a recovery method at the same time. And it's something that Gardic is really good with his warding. Even smokes on the way over there in case there was something to scout him out. The question is, will Z-Freak scout it out instantly? You even block out the large camp here, so Z-Freak doesn't have a camp there either. So even though they had got those 2 kills earlier, not really seeing the same strength of this Mirana because of just some fantastic warding from Hikori.
Yeah, Gardic is really doing everything in his power to limit that early impact from the Mirana, which, to be fair, is one of the greater strengths of that Mirana pick, is what she can do. Aggression in the lane, controlling the equilibrium, stacking up these camps. So was Z-Freak unable to do so? Well, I'm not going to say he can't do anything. It's just the efficiency that you would normally expect from this hero, and in particular Z-Freak on this hero, may not really be there. Although he is going to go for a bit of a courier snipe here. Able to take that down at least. So a nice play from Z-Freak, still trying to make something happen. And while he's roaming around, at least Mu is getting solo XP here. He's getting close to his level 6. So you do have that going for you, but still interested to see exactly what the Treant's plan is here. We see the Meteor Hammer queued up for him first, so he is going to have that to work with. But beyond that point, the itemization could kind of go in a few different directions.
Yeah, and I'm still just eyeing up this Ancient stack. The biggest problem right now for Z-Freak is that he's not able to arrow in lane. He's given all of the XP and levels over to Mu, and he's not able to farm these camps either. And every sentry that he invests is just, again, a slower and slower Mirana game, where the big reason you pick that hero is to win the economy. You get way more out of the map than your opponents, and here's Gunnar.
They're going in, they've got that overgrowth coming in, into the avalanche, into the toss. That's exactly what they wanted. Mu hits 6, and they go straight forward. Gunnar is able to get both of those kills as well, so progress towards that Blink Dagger is increasing. He's obviously not quite there yet, but kills like that will help, and 4Zoomers ever so slightly pulling away from their opponents right now, 1k in their favor. So we were just talking about how Z-Freak hasn't really had too many opportunities to get aggressive across the map, but certainly able to link up with Gunnar there and make something happen.
Yeah, and it's in part just because Moo gets that level 6 so quickly. I wouldn't really call for a level 7 or a level 6 Treant Protector 7 minutes into the game. He has really done a really nice job. He's gonna have his Meteor Hammer pretty soon as well, and that's where RDO has to leave the lane. He has to go top, and then is going to be relying on his triangle for most of his farm at this stage. But that's where I still see this Eternal NVTA who has finally gotten pushed out. He has to respect the Rupture. He can't really do much versus that, especially if the Lion isn't showing. So this top lane is going to be forfeit. Even Analog making the long trip top, just placing a Remnant here in case a fight did break out. But that's where it is a little bit easier for Hikori to make these early tower pushes happen, where for Zoomers, you're still waiting for the Meteor Hammer. You're still waiting for the Blink Dagger on Tiny, which are both coming at really quick speeds. With level 1 living armor, this does mean that Hikori can play on your level 1 or your tier 1 towers a little bit easier, especially with how good their wave clear is. They farm these creep camps and especially these waves very, very quickly, especially with the max level Bloodseeker. He's got 4 points in Blood Rite already. He is the big winner of Hikori's side right now.
Top net worth hero in the game at the moment. So I like this, as you said, from Hikori. They realize we've got a little bit of a window here before the Blink is ready, before the Meteor Hammer is ready. So they are hitting that timing pretty damn hard. Already took the tier 1 top, tier 1 mid is under attack. Living armor, well, as you pointed out earlier, it's only level 1. It's really not that effective. The tower still falls, and Hikori, not sure if they're going to be able to keep this up for much longer once some of those items come out. Yeah, as bottom lane, there's the jump in. Gardic, yeah, he's not getting out of that one. Moo did have to throw down the Overgrowth again, which for position 5 support maybe doesn't feel like the greatest in the world, but it gets Gunnar another kill, and Blink Dagger's out. Gunnar's ready to go, so we see he and Z-Freak smoking their way towards mid. Technically, they caught Moo in that, but Moo's not really coming. But what can they find at this point? They're maneuvering back onto their own side of the map. I think they, suspected that Analog was still hanging out there, but he's able to jump his way back mid in time, but Gunnar still has that blink. He's going in. There's the Abatos into the arrow, keeping him locked down. He did get out that Flame Guard first, but wow. Even at level 3, that absorption is just straight up not enough as Gunnar strikes, and this is what we want to see from the Tiny. This is what Zoomers had been hoping for the whole time, and now for Hikori, those tower pushes we were talking about become so much more complicated. If you just sort of push your way forward now, you are very much going to have to watch your back. If Gunnar can pick off anybody, and he's just going to go in, get the kill, and then try to back out.
And it's a really tight smoke from 4 Zoomers. You take a look at Hikori's vision, they found a way onto the Ember Spirit in the only gap where they don't have anything. There are no eyes scouting out the route that they took from the bottom lane. And that's where Hikori really needs to make a direct effort onto this bottom lane. If you catch the Treant Protector out, it's going to be very, very important for them. But right now, Gardic is just getting played on again. You don't want this.
And there's going to be the Meteor Hammer coming into play. Tier 2 taking some damage. And as you said, Hikori, you don't want this. It's not even just that it's not ideal. You straight up need to prevent this kind of play. Moo can't be allowed to just sort of play in this lane by himself. So you saw Analog make his way down, but once he realizes everyone's leaving, he backs away. The problem is, it was a fake. 4 Zoomers are still here in force. 3 heroes hanging out. So he's going to continue pushing this tower on the Treant, and if you lose your tier 2 this early, we're talking, what is this, around 12 minutes, then there's going to be a lot of space on the map that will now no longer be really safe for your side, and open and available for Zoomers. Vitali, this is a risky one. He gets knocked back into the arrow by the Rolling Thunder, but they do have that Solar Guardian coming in. Meanwhile, the Rupture was actually deployed onto Husky, so he has to stop rolling, stuck in the middle of this fight, but now Gunnar comes in. There's going to be the Avalanche into the toss. Moo follows it up with the Overgrowth, and this is not going to go well for that Hikori side. Analog, though, is at least able to use the Sleight of Fist to dodge out that little bit of extra damage, so he gets away, but they still lose 2. They do eventually get Husky in the exchange, but now Almisho is on the run as well.
Ooh, Gunnar.
Uh-oh, Gunnar, stunned up. Analog came back in, but damage-wise, the Ember Spirit is not really in top form right now, so they're going to let Gunnar go, but while all that was going down, Envy says, I'm not fighting. I'm taking the tower, and he did get it. So the tier 1 is gone, both mid and bot. And 4 Zoomers, you sacrifice Husky, but you are more than okay with that trade-off.
Yeah, and it's just four Zoomers playing with the success of the bottom lane. And Hikori are doing a strategy that they've become very, very comfortable with. Gardic just wants to occupy this bottom lane, spam it out with Celestial Hammer, except usually he's Treant Protector in these cases. And of course, because Envy kills that mid tower, it does refresh their glyph, so this tier 2 will stand a little bit longer. But this is not how you want to be playing with the Dawnbreaker. You don't want to keep running to the lane that the Dawnbreaker is playing in. Instead, they want to play in the top. And
Gunnar just got caught. Big kill if they can pick it off. They're going to use the Finger of Death, taking no chances. And Analog is the one to get it. He gets the unstoppable kill streak going in his favor in terms of that bonus gold. So that's the pick that they needed. They take Gunnar off the map for a little while, and now maybe they can address this bottom lane, try to keep Moo out for, well, not forever, obviously. The Treant is eventually going to get this, but if you can force Moo to use up more time and resources, you're going to be in a better spot. So you see Vitali pushing out the lane. They might want to be a little bit careful, though, with Husky and Moo hanging out in the tree line. And actually, Envy's TPing in. So is Gunnar. Is this actually going to be a full setup? It looks like Moo's getting hit up first. He's trying for the overgrowth, but not going to be able to get it down in time. There's a Solar Guardian coming in, but Husky rolling his way forward, trying to act as that distraction, but at this point, it's just not going to be enough, but Gunnar has joined the fight. He goes for the Avalanche into the toss. Almisha will be taken down. Analog dropping low. They need a bit more damage to finish him off, but they don't get it in time. Swashbuckle will not be there, and now Gunnar is in the middle of 3. RDO's even coming in. Not going to get any damage out, but he's not needed as Gunnar goes down, and 4 Zoomers, well, they tried for the play. To be honest, I kind of thought Envy was going to be joining that one after he TP'd in, but he wanted the farm in the jungle instead, and the play, the initiation itself is a little too broken up, and Hikori benefit massively with that teamfight win.
Yeah, you even bring RDO over in case the cleanup crew needed to come forward, but that was so tight from Hikori. If you don't kill the Treant Protector there before the overgrowth gets off, if that silence doesn't last for that breakneck second, then that fight gets much more complicated for you. Instead, they find the perfect burst on all their targets, and I think 4 Zoomers didn't settle nearly fast enough. Instead, they go for a little bit of a crazy kill on Analog, who has max level Flame Guard, so one of your tiny spells isn't going to land. And it's unfortunate that you don't get the full damage coming from Husky, but that's where they took the fight a little bit too long. They play into Hikori for a few moments, just a little bit too long. If they get to come in and leave, then I think that play is fine, but they get trapped by the chains, they get silenced again, they just get hit by 2 fantastic Blood Rights, and then everything falls apart. As well as Z-Freak not being there, interestingly enough. I think that he made a pretty big venture to the top lane, and he stayed there for just a minute too long, and Hikori definitely find the punch, and that's Gunnar dying twice in a row. That is not ideal for him at all. And Hikori can play down here, while they know that Envy isn't quite farmed enough to threaten the Roshan attempt, but if they find Moo, this would be big. This would be a nice play onto this bottom T1.
Yeah, they are bringing quite a few heroes down here, though, so at this point, if you don't find Moo, maybe you push for the tower. You kind of have to try something, but it looks like that's not going to be the case. RDO will simply TP himself top. You do see Vitali coming up there as well. They're going to drop the Rupture onto Envy. That's going to get through the refraction charges. That Solar Guardian will not connect onto the TA, but Envy has nowhere to go. He's just got to sit here and really eat this death. There's no one to help him. The backup was just too far away. Gardic, okay, I mean, he sacrifices his life there, but he likes that trade, but now Vitali is the one in trouble, too far forward, running into Gunnar, but Husky has to hit him up maybe one more time in order to actually get the kill. The Swashbuckle does come in, and they will get it. Meanwhile, back in the fight, Moo connects with the Overgrowth onto 2, Z-Free comes in with the arrow, RDO is dropping low, but Gunnar, he's out of the fight. Elmisho is sort of keeping him occupied over in the Roche Pit, but Gunnar is able to blink in. There's going to be the Avatos combo coming through. RDO will fall, and Analog dies as well, so Elmisho, I mean, you got to give him credit. He bought so much time there keeping Gunnar away. It just wasn't quite oh god. Wasn't quite enough as the arrow will not connect, but Gunnar's back in, blinks forward, Avalanche into toss. Misho taken down. Gardic, ambitious, but Z-Freak has no charges on the leap. He does have the stick charges though, so I don't think Gardic was going to be able to get that one. He's just got to let that fight go, and 4 Zoomers able to really swing that one in their favor. They lose Moo. Envy obviously goes down near the start of that fight as well, but they get pretty much everyone on the Hikori side in exchange.
And the entire reason they made that big rotation towards the Radiant Triangle is because they wanted to eye up some of RDO's stacks, and 4 Zoomers get to take more or less everything And I think that's where they got a little bit greedy there. After you don't find the play on move bottom, you then flood TPs and you catch Envy off guard, and that is fantastic. But you end up playing underneath all of this infrastructure that Force Zoomers have already placed. And I think it's a really nice bait from Force Zoomers, kiting away from their vision and then relying on it in the end. Elmisho did a really good job keeping Tiny out of the fight as long as he did, but once you run out of those stuns, Gunnar just has that really nice Avatos onto both cores. And Gunnar, who was just sitting at another 2 pretty bad deaths in the past 2 minutes, now has another 4 kills to play on, and he is right back in full strength, right back where a player like Dark Mago is also at whenever he gets this Tiny.
Yeah, the aggression that finds its mark, 9, 2, and 3 for the Tiny. So a bump in the road, so to speak, for Gunnar, but one that he has quickly sort of gotten himself past. But this is the other thing we see from some of these Tinies. Can this aggression remain consistent moving forward? We're starting to get into that sort of 20-plus minute stage, so Gunnar has to continue being able to make these moves. We do see the Echo Saber picked up. Analog, can he somehow get away? Nope. Root comes in. They're going to hit him up with the Avalanche into the toss, into even the Meteor Hammer, and Gardic, he didn't cancel. Oh, you don't want to be here, Gardic. That's unfortunate. He's going to try to dance himself out of this, but there's really nowhere he can go. He's just going to get run down as Gunnar missed, but there we go. Blinks forward. He'll finish the kill, gets both of them for the double, and Gardic, good instinct, not the best timing. A little bit too late to the party, and then obviously jumps into a 1v4.
Yeah, and this is becoming quite the big problem now for Hikori. You don't have that lockdown item finished on Vitaly, you have BKB almost finished up on Envy, and that's where this fight is going to get redirected into the triangle, where for Zoomers, again with a very nice smoke, if they want to find the fight, they can definitely get it. But that's where a player like Gunnar feels incredibly fearsome to play against. When we talk about Tiny, we always talk about how key the item timings are. If you ever feel like you're getting slowed down, it really is 1 or 2 plays before it feels like you can't make those incredibly aggressive maneuvers. But he is also making really fast progress towards his BKB. And the bigger problem at hand is your lineup does not feel very good if you don't have that magic damage coming out from the Hikori side. I think once this BKB is finished up on the Tiny, he's going to pop it if he ever gets ruptured, and he's going to sit there. And you're going to have to get through this 4,000 HP, 26 armor hero, and that is all the time in the world for the rest of 4 Zoomers to pull you apart. Where I don't even think that Hikori have the team fight advantage in this game. I think 4 Zoomers with the Penguin, the Treant Protector, are going to look for those massive engagements. And this is all without even talking about Roche, something that they've been very careful about not throwing around the pit. With the Crystalist, they would be able to take it incredibly quickly on the Hikori side. But that's where 4 Zoomers, I think, if they're not making a smoke play, they are going to sit in their lanes and farm it up. Once they get these BKBs, that's where this game gets really hard for Hikori and really interesting, because it's going to be a clash of these 2 ideals.
Yeah, and especially looking at Analog's build right now, got the Maelstrom up, he's looking for a BKB after, so if the magic immunity starts coming out from the 4 Zoomer side, then Hikori will become even more dependent on physical damage that, as of right now, Analog really can't provide. That puts all the pressure really onto RDO to try and carry them through these engagements that, as you mentioned, 4 Zoomers will be looking for at really every opportunity. So I don't know if Analog is thinking about maybe more of a damage-oriented build beyond the BKB, but for the time being, his impact in these team fights, once those BKBs are ready, it's going to be questionable, and we'll see how they respond. But Envy at least was able to finish off that BKB for himself. Gunnar's obviously not quite here yet, but they're actually going to go before Gunnar has the BKB. 5-man smoke, and this time Envy is going to be participating in this fight, presumably, so they are coming at their opponents with full power, trying to get up this ramp before anyone's there to pop it. Vitaly does get to position, but he doesn't realize they're there until it's too late. Vitaly already dead. Gardic does come in with that Solar Guardian. Vitaly, though, is going to buy back, trying to rejoin the fight, but, well, I don't know if Hikori really want this one. Vitaly is back in, but RDO is the one who actually needs help. They've got to protect him. You see Analog coming in, but there's Move blinking forward. Overgrowth down. Meteor Hammer coming in onto 2. Analog will fall. Vitaly dead a second time as Envy gets the kill, but now Analog actually bought back as well, trying to go after Gunnar, but this is not a kill he's going to get. Gunnar blinks back in, going for the toss into the Avalanche, and Analog, that felt unbelievably greedy. He felt, I have the Remnant down, I can buy back, I can jump in, but I mean, Gunnar still had a couple hundred health, 600-700 at that point, so that was not going to be an easy kill, even with that buyback getting him into position, and now you lost the fight, 2 of your cores died back in that engagement, and 4 Zoomers get Roche for free.
And that is a huge power spike that 4 Zoomers hit. That's why they look for that engagement. And Gunnar, even without the BKB, he sits there ruptured, he waits his time, he already got the damage out. And the bigger problem is that Envy's positioning was so incredibly good there. He sat there and he man-fought the Gyrocopter, who was still working on a BKB of his own. The bigger issue is without the Satanic, and you already see Artio queuing it up, because if you get one Avatos combo on the Tiny, if you get Meld Struck and hit up 3 times, you have no way to get your HP back, and you have to be timid. You have to be scared of actually getting bursted, as well as you always have this fear of the Overgrowth waiting in the back of your mind, where Mu, who has a Blink Dagger, was also revealed in that fight. That was just a really good timing push from 4 Zoomers, completely catching Hikori off guard. That all starts with only the vision coming in from a single TA trap as well. So that was just the perfect moment, and unfortunately Vitaly standing right on top of it, he was none the wiser. There was absolutely nothing he could do there. It's Gardic missing 1 sentry in the woods, and they make a play off of that, and Analog just a little bit too crazy there, going back in with only 1 remnant. They wanted the kill on Gunnar so badly, and now this is an awful situation to be in. There's so many items now being finished up. Whenever the high ground's going to get breached, you're going to have to be playing versus a Daedalus TA and a full BKB finished up on the Tiny. You literally can't kill him anymore. And oh, Analog
is going to get caught. There's a Meteor Hammer. Gardic's here to save the day, though. Okay. But save the day, yeah, means that he has to die, unfortunately. But if that gets Analog out, that's going to be just fine. Elmisho, though, might want to be careful. Trying to get himself out of here as well. Gets the Hex down, turns around for the Earth Spike, and that's going to keep TA at bay for now. Meanwhile, Gunnar was trying to sneak his way over, but Analog is able to hit him up with the Searing Chains for the root. So only the 1 kill for 4 Zoomers, but you see the way that they're playing on the map right now. They have taken control of that south side jungle, and Analog was honestly pretty far back in terms of this bottom lane in general, and still got jumped in on. So there's just such little room to maneuver right now, and especially for Hikori, with Vitaly and Analog both being down their buybacks, you really cannot afford right now to be giving up anything other than your supports.
Yeah, and that's where, unfortunately, we aren't going to see any aggressive plays coming from the Dawnbreaker. I think the easiest play they can make is once Elmisho has level 2 Finger, look for some of those kills possibly on either Z-Freak or Husky, and it's more traps. You're fighting in TA territory. You have to be careful here, but Artio is actually feeling comfortable enough to run at Envy, but doesn't want it.
Yeah, I was thinking for a minute, it's like, do you really want to do this? Meanwhile, Gunnar, well, he doesn't want to do that. He jumps in for a moment, sees that there's pretty much everyone in that sort of west side jungle, pops the BKB, and TP's home. So, maybe not the most efficient use of the 9-second, but he's able to get himself out.
The arrow actually clipped Elmisho on the ramp, so they're pinging out that a smoke is happening right now. That's really sick from Z-Freak.
That may be too far, but okay. Elmisho blinks in. Rupture comes down from Vitaly, so Husky really can't do a whole lot here, but Z-Freak's trying to come in. Not going to be able to save the first life on the TA, but he buys time for the reinforcements to arrive. Vitaly is dead. Elmisho will go down as well. Artio looking to TP out, but he'll be finished off before he can get it. Now Analog has to try and get out of here, but there's nowhere to go. Just can't move. He used all of his remnants in the fight, and Gardic, he's the only survivor as he's able to TP back, but this is potentially backbreaking. 4 dead, as we mentioned earlier. 2 of those cores don't have buyback. Actually, the Gyrocopter is 1,000 gold short of his, so 4 Zoomers, I mean, they did have to use the Aegis, but they've got the opportunity now to really just break down some of these structures.
And on paper, it's a fantastic smoke. It really goes back to Z-Freak scouting it out with the arrow. They get prepared for it a little bit too quickly, and they didn't know about the Arcane Rune on Gunnar when he popped that BKB. If it really came down to brass tacks, Gunnar had it in the end, so it's not like he was under any threat. But that smoke's also perfect if Envy doesn't have an Aegis. I think 4 Zoomers are just doing a really good job at appraising their strength right now. They know what fights they can and cannot take, as well as the Lotus Orb on Z-Freak just causing so many problems for the Hikori side. It feels like they can't get a clean jump anymore, even though they are landing a lot of their spells on that initial jump. It's just once these fights prolong for another 10-15 seconds, you're playing in the realm of the Treant Protector, you're playing in the healing meta, and you're losing it pretty hard right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the ET, it feels like it's getting late pretty early here for Hikori. We're all of 26 minutes in, and they're kind of huddled up, mostly in their base. We do see a little bit of a forward position here for RDO and Elmisho, but they're just so pinned back. Their teamfight execution has not really been enough in a lot of these engagements as Moo.
What a blink.
Ooh, living life a little dangerously there. But yeah, the Blink Dagger is going to get him away, but for this point in the game, Hikori, it feels like they should not be pinned this far back, but it's just the way that it is, and the lack of farming opportunities now for anyone not named RDO is kind of appalling, really, to use that phrase. You take a look, Vitaly and Analog, they're behind the Mirana in terms of net worth. That's just straight up not okay if they want to try and get back into this.
Yeah, and that's where this next Rosh is going to be the most important moment of the game. The timer right now is, can Hikori get enough items to actually show up to this fight? That's where you need to see a BKB on both the Ember Spirit and the Bloodseeker. You need Satanic and maybe the works of a Daedalus on RDO. If they can get any semblance of those items in the next 2 or 3 minutes, if this Rosh respawns in 2 minutes, though, that would be best case scenario for Zoomers. Because right now, Hikori are on an extreme timer. They need to get these items ready. And of course, that's where Zoomers are going to have quite a few more items of their own. There's going to be a full Ags on both the Tiny and the Mirana by the time that fight starts, as well as a refresher on Eternal Envy.
Huh?
Double
Wait.
BKB? Okay.
Okay, yeah, that is exactly what is queued up, and it's already been started, so it's not quite a fake out. That... Really?
I mean, the man likes Refresher. He's the one who started the Razor build, but it's a little bit crazy. I think that is pretty smart from Envy, though. He really is valuing what is the most important in this game. The only way he dies is if he doesn't have BKB and he's getting fingered by Elmisho. So it's an interesting build to go for, that's for certain. It's not an Orchid, it's not a Blink Dagger, it's not a Lincoln's, it's a Refresher. Okay.
Right. And I feel like if 4 Zoomers weren't up 18k, maybe we'd be a little bit more concerned about this item build, but you've got a big enough buffer here where it's not like it's just a troll item, right? It is going to give him more of what he needs with that sort of double BKB and multiple sort of refractions available. So it works, it's just... It works because you have this massive lead, so you can kind of afford to go for an item like this. So we'll see if it really is that thing that puts him over the edge. Because, I mean, if you do pop double refraction, double BKB, who on Hikori does anything to him?
Yeah, I think another aspect of it is he isn't the one getting ruptured in a lot of these fights. I think if he was targeted a little bit more, then we might see a change up in his ideal. I think more interestingly would be what item he gets after the refresher, because I can only imagine in classic Envy fashion, he's going to get something to pair with it, whether that be the Hex that we sometimes see very farm TAs go for, or we see something crazy like an Abyssal Blade, or maybe even a Bloodthorn Rush immediately after. Knowing Envy, it could be a Gleipnir for all we know, but I feel like something has to come out after the fact, and maybe this is an error that Hikori could play around, but that's where the name of the game is still that second Rosh. Can these really ultimate or really important items come out on the Hikori side, or will they be forced to just throw their bodies at their opponents with buybacks? Because that is the name of the game. And once this Rosh spawns, and hopefully for Hikori, it doesn't spawn in 45 seconds, you're either playing around these final item timings, or you're playing around trying to buy back and play around this tier 2 top. Those are the only things they can really go for at this point, while 4 Zoomers still hold the lead. I don't think it's necessarily going to increase any further, but that's just because they're respecting their opponents and valuing what should be this dominating position around the pit.
Trying to maintain that map control as opposed to maybe just farming focus. But speaking of farming, Gunnar did get himself the Aghanim Scepter just a moment or two ago, so that Tree Volley in the right spot, it's a pretty devastating combo. If you can get out the Overgrowth into Meteor Hammer with Tree Volley on top of it, there are very few heroes who will survive it. Mu, though, has to use the Overgrowth there as Analog jumps in onto him, but that is going to lead them into a fight. Gunnar, however, does get hit up by the Rupture, so he's not going to be able to move too much. And now, actually, you see him just looking to TP home, trying to make it away, but while he does that, Husky very nearly got another hit in onto Analog there. If he does, maybe Analog gets into trouble, but he is able to live. And
Oh,
Hikori,
Misho.
did he find? Yes, he did. He gets in onto Z-Freak. He needs backup, though. And the backup is coming, kind of, but not in time. Elmisha will be taken down. That's a bit disappointing there. It was a nice play from that line to sort of keep the opponent in his sights, but no one else from Hikori can reach him to actually take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's not the biggest deal, of course, but Elmisha was sitting in those top trees for such a long time. I'm glad that he was finally able to catch Mu, but that's where Mu has also done such a good job of being that incredibly annoying tree protector. It's just this time, Hikori were a little bit too prepared, but it's little plays like that that make this game get a little bit closer than it feels like it needs to be. That's another BKB charge committed by Gunnar as well. Of course, not the biggest deal, but when BKBs are as important as they are in this game, it does feel like something like that is going to end up mattering, especially with RDO finishing up the Satanic, and it wasn't the fastest roast respawn either. So if RDO can either play around his buyback or the full Daedalus, anything goes in this next team fight. If these BKBs drag on too long or committed too early, I could definitely see 4 Zoomers losing this Aegis, and then the game is completely flipped in a 10k gold swing.
It's all going to come down to that play around the pit, though. So both sides gearing up for it. Envy has the Refresher Orb now online. And Mu, meanwhile, with the Aghanim Scepter, just trying to set up those eyes, looking for really as much vision and control as possible. Although, as of right now, it's mostly focused in the south and the east here. You see some of these eyes being set up. So not really setting up in and around the Roche Pit, although that could change now. You see the smoke play out from 4 Zoomers, 4-man smoke, 5-man smoke, though, from their opponents. As Hikori are going to really put themselves on a collision course, and this could get nasty. RDO did finish off the Daedalus, so the damage output is going to be there, but Hikori need to find the target. They're getting up onto the high ground. They threw down the sentry first, so they know that there's at least one Shrap in the area, but they want the kill. They jumped in, they hit Z-Freak. Can they bring him down in time? Quick pickoff is going to start the fight. Husky actually gets blown up as well, but Envy trying to fire back. They're going to be able to take down one as Gardic will fall. RDO now dead as well. That is the far more valuable of those kills, and now it's just going to fall apart for Hikori. Analog cuts his losses and really ditches while the rest of his lineup gets completely wiped out. Triple kill for Envy. And if you're Hikori, you start out the fight nice with 2 quick support pickoffs, but the cores are just too tough.
Yeah, and RDO got so greedy with his Satanic. He popped it whenever he was right on the cusp of death, and unfortunately, when you're hitting into that refraction target, you're not healing for very much at all, and nobody to cleave off as well. They caught him without the flax, so that is just disastrous. And of course, if they lost that fight, you knew what was going to be next. So this is the second Roche, and another big timing for Zoomers to do whatever they want now, because you have this Aegis completed on Envy. You get to be crazy. You get to go in and suicide for these support kills, where Zoomers have all the time in the world to finish off even more of these luxury items, make the game even more impossible for Hikori. You need something else on RDO, whether it's some more armor or it's something to kite out this TA, because he just got blown up pretty much alone by Envy. Envy just sat there, melted him twice, I think, and then he got 2-shot by the Daedalus.
He just needs, well, maybe to be a little bit less greedy with the items than positioning, but outside of that, needs a little bit more in terms of durability. Meanwhile, you mentioned the Aegis going into the TA's hands. I believe Gunnar was able to grab the shard for himself, so that tree grab's just basically permanent. But that damage output for him is terrifying, really. I mean, you look at this Tiny, he's got 4.2k health. He's got a Daedalus, he's got the tree volley, so they are going to have to avoid him, which means, yeah, go for softer targets, which Mu, technically speaking, does count as at this point. Nearly 3k health himself, but not enough to stand up to that. Vitali, Analog, and Elmisho make the combined push in, and they do get that kill. Those are the plays that Hikori now need. Full-on pitched 5v5 battles really don't seem to have been going their way, so it may just come down to the sort of hit-and-run tactics to try and draw this one out.
And very importantly, you take the gem away from the Treant Protector, and that's where the name of the game really is delay, delay, delay. If you can force your opponents to play on their side of the map, if you can force them out of these areas, and are you showing top? Oh, he's getting set up on really quickly.
Envy TP's in, Husky's there as well, but it's Envy and Gunnar who are going to
Oh.
do the damage. Oh my god, Gartic can't even get there in time. Even with the Solar Guardian, it just doesn't do enough. Artio falls, Gartic dead as well. Analog was able to find a return kill, picking off Husky there, but that's just not going to be enough. They've got to fall back, and that completely puts a stop to any operations on their opponent's side of the map for Hikori.
Yeah, and that's where it felt like they were doing a really good job for a few moments there. And of course, you force the entire enemy team to back at that tier 2 tower, but it's your gyrocopter that's getting killed. I feel like him and Analog need to swap roles in that essence where you can't afford to lose your life on Artio anymore. You need more items. Look at his quick buy right now. He knows exactly how he's dying, and it makes complete sense. I think 5 plate mills would definitely give him more armor here, but it's so difficult for him to exist in these fights. Double Daedalus is just brutal right now for the gyrocopter. He literally can't stand next to anyone, and not having the best attack range, of course, because he is that gyrocopter, just means that now they're going to push in when they know they don't have buyback on the gyro. They still should know about that Daedalus, and it's only been 2 minutes since they got that Aegis, so there really hasn't been enough time for him to finish anything up item-wise or buyback-wise.
What a nightmare phrase, though, to say if you're a gyrocopter player, right? Or even just the gyrocopter on your team, someone comes in and says gyrocopter can't afford to stand next to anyone. It's like, so I mean, he's basically not a hero if he can't get into the middle of it. He's got the call down still, I suppose, but that is the downside. He cannot go toe-to-toe with Envy. He cannot stay close to Gunnar. He's got to maintain his distance, which the gyrocopter is not very good at. So we'll see what the answer is. I mean, as you said, the plate mills are queued up, but I mean, he could just straight up buy a plate mail, swap it out for the Quelling Blade, see how that goes for him. It would certainly make him more durable, but beyond that point, I'm not really sure exactly what he would want to build that into. But he may not even have the time to consider what he builds that into, because you see 4 Zoomers, they're still sort of prowling around, hanging out outside the base. It's not just a full-on push onto the high ground, although Aegis has about 45 seconds left on the timer, so if they did want to try to push in, maybe leave Envy out in front as bait, now would sort of be their window to do so. But they are showing a little bit of respect to Hikori. Despite the way the last couple of fights have gone, they're aware if we overextend, we're still technically capable of being punished, although Envy wouldn't really guess that from what he's doing there. Jumping in onto Vitaly straight away, pushing that Bloodseeker back, and now going straight in for the Rax. The Lotus, though, well, it doesn't prevent the stun, but it really makes it less important as that missile gets reflected. Arrow, meanwhile, narrowly missing onto Analog, but all this is just a distraction on the back line so that Envy on the front line could finish off the entirety of the top lane.
Yeah, I think Analog needs to go for the backdoor play. He needs to somehow manage himself out of the tier 3s. You can't afford to just let them get set up. There have been a lot of weird pauses in this game.
Yeah,
I don't know why we're pausing so much. But
no reasons given for any of the... I mean, the DC one's obvious. There's a DC, but... I don't know. Envy pauses for like 3 seconds, and then he's the one who says that he's ready, so...
Yeah, whatever, but I think that's where you need to get the backdoor going. But that's where Mu has done a really good job of forcing his opponents into the base. He's drawn the line with his Aghanim Scepter. The trees are down, and fortunately for them, Aegis is gone. It was timed very nicely from 4 Zoomers to go for that top push. They knew that it was going to be pretty free for them. And Artio is going for that AC. He was able to get that plate mail, and nice smoke from Hikori. If they can find Envy right now, that would be the best, but that's where 4 Zoomers are also doing a really nice job sticking together, staying on the high ground. It's the Tau play. You are going to sit on the high ground with your ward, not let them come to you, and now they're going to smoke. And with the Treant Vision, they know that if they break, they're going to have the advantage here.
There's Gunnar in onto Gartic first. They're going to be able to blow him up. Envy, though, did get hexed up by Almisho, but they're too broken up right now. They're already falling back. They've got 1 foot out the door. Almisho is going to try to blink away. Not going to be able to make it, and that rupture is not great. Probably would have been better off holding his fire on that one from Vitaly, but oh, Hikori, it would have been nice. It was a good idea with the smoke play. It's just those eyes in the trees really just giving 4 Zoomers all the knowledge that they needed. And the good news is that both of those supports for Hikori have buyback, so if they are needed, they can get them onto the front line. The problem is the front line is rapidly falling apart. You see Envy pushing his way bot. He's already burned through the tier 3 tower. Ranged Rax will be taken down, so By the time the supports are back up, they could be two lanes of Rex down. Analog got hit by the arrow. I think the Sleight of Fist ended with him in the arrow's path. He's dead. His buyback is available as well, and they're absolutely going to have to use this one. I'm not really sure that they can hold much of anything without him, but at this point, even if he does buy back, it's already too late. I mean, there it is, but the Megas have been acquired. This is not going the way that they want. The Rod of Atos doesn't connect. Oh, man. Nothing going there for Hikori.
If they get Envy there on the high ground, maybe you get a TA kill. You try to snowball that into taking back your triangle. Of course, you're already saying that we're going to have to play versus Megas, and that's just Gunnar doing a really nice job of split pushing a little bit there. But of course, he can get away with it. They're so focused on the TA. And then not Elmisho, Analog buying back so late there, I feel really awkward now. It's like Hikori have given away what could have been a few plays there just because their supports both didn't have buyback. It's just going to be a 40k gold lead into what could be for Zoomers waiting for the Roche, or more likely they're waiting for one more Air Connect, one more Avitas coming in from Gunnar into a dieback on Analog. That could also spell the end of the game here. But for Zoomers, they can take it at their own pace. They could get another 5,000 gold lead, another Aegis, and then finish out the game that way, or they could just go really whenever. I think that they have a smoke on Husky, or they actually might be out. They've been smoking quite a lot, so it makes sense for it to not be in stock as of right now. But do they really wait for Roshan? I guess it is respawning in 3 seconds, so why not? But this definitely feels like beating a dead horse a little bit. There's not really anything coming out from the Hikori side either. They're trying to buy little items. Gartic's gone back for 2 bracers just to try and be a little tankier in some of these fights, but it does feel like death is almost assured for Hikori at this rate. There's going to be another full Aegis. There's going to be a refresher now also, so that's double roll, that's double tree and protector ulti, where as soon as you commit those BKBs, Nuke could very simply pop it again, and then you're stuck into this double Daedalus lineup. I really don't see an exit plan right now for Hikori. It just doesn't appear to me right now. There needs to be a slew of misplays coming in from 4 Zoomers. Otherwise, this game is going to end very, very soon, I feel like.
Yeah, as of right now, it just feels like for 4 Zoomers, regardless of what the final time on this match is going to be, it kind of feels like a game that they could have won maybe 5 to 10 minutes ago if they wanted to take that risk, but the slow and steady route honestly isn't working out too poorly for them either. So if you don't have to take the risk, I suppose, why actually do it? But I think they're showing maybe a little bit too much respect to Hikori. Hikori really feel like they're a house of cards right now, right? One sort of push away from just toppling, and they're putting up a good front, but once the team fight itself actually breaks out, I don't know how well they really hold up. So 4 Zoomers...
Is that a second one? Okay. Gunnar has 2 Daedalus.
Oh my god.
Seems good.
Alright, yeah, this is fair. This is definitely fair. He's got a Swift Blink and 2 Daedaluses. Daedalus? Daedalus? He hit hard. There you go.
Yeah, it's annoying. It feels like the game could end very abruptly, especially because there's no buyback on Gyro. He bought out for this AC. I think the biggest mistake that 4 Zoomers could make right now is letting RDO finish off this Divine Rapier. If he can get that, then this game gets a little bit more interesting. But that's where it's also hard to say that the game can get interesting because there is a 46k net worth deficit right now. It feels like all of the luxury items have been made. Unfortunately, a lot of this farm is still going to Envy. Envy is getting to the point where I think he does need to take a step back, let the rest of his team farm his side of the map, something that they are willing to do. They are farming everywhere right now, which is exactly what they should do whenever they have this supreme map control. But the unfortunate aspect of having mega creeps is with waves always pushing in, you always have some source of income for the team that is megas. And RDO, with the way that he's built himself up, can be that vanguard for you. He can sit in front, tank a lot. These tier 4s are very healthy, so it's not like we're going to see the rat play necessarily come out from 4 Zoomers, but I really just think don't let RDO finish off the Divine Rapier. I don't know what item they're exactly waiting for on 4 Zoomers. They have a smoke on Husky as well, so if they wanted to go for that game-ending play or even trying to play on the towers to get the glyph forced first, that would be an option, but instead they really are taking this one low and slow for what I don't know. I don't know what the reason they're going so slow is. There's not exactly a level 30 that they're playing for. And finally they smoke up, but they were able to get buyback on Artio. They kind of missed their moment where they kill the gyro and the game ends. So this fight might not go as cleanly as they want.
Well, let's see how they handle it. They're going to get the toss back onto the gyrocopter. Artio, though, pops the BKB, pops the Satanic, trying to fight his way through this. There's going to be the jump in from Gartic as well with the Solar Guardian, but now Artio going to be taken down, but he has the buyback, so he's back into the engagement. But the arrow connects onto Analog. They lock him down. The Ember Spirit will be taken down, and, well, ET, a moment ago I used the analogy of a house of cards. That feels like a pretty apt analogy. You see that, they jump in, Artio's dead, Analog's taken out, and there's just really not much left for them to try here, with Gartic taken down again. Oh man, Z-Freak. He did have the level 25 talent, so he's throwing out multiple arrows there, but able to make that connection. Now Artio gets clipped by an arrow. And I don't think he's making it out. The Satanic comes in, but he can't heal his way through all that damage. Envy picks up the Ultra, and the GG will be called for Zoomers. Well, Low and Slow gets the job done for them as they take the first match of this 2-game series.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what win probability looks like in this game, because it does feel like this game was over for quite a while, but it is some measured play from 4Zoomers. They had 2 incredibly good smokes to get them into this dominating position. They played around their timings. They didn't let themselves fall behind. It was a really good game from them. It was incredibly clean, something that was extremely lacking in a lot of their previous series. I think you can't look at this game and say that 4Zoomers had too many game-losing misplays, as well as Z-Freak, just incredibly consistent on this Mirana. I feel like a lot of his plays were setting up everything. You have that arrow landing on a lot of targets that I feel like should be a little bit more ready for them. But those arrows landing whenever the high ground's getting pushed, it's brutal. If that arrow lands on Analog, or if that arrow misses on Analog just once or twice, I feel like this game looks a little bit different. But every back-breaking arrow that did connect just was everything. The entire game fell apart after that point. I do think they went for the harder route. I think if you strike whenever Artio doesn't have buyback, then the game just ends on that toss-back play. But instead, it goes on a little bit longer, but it is already too late. The foundation that they set up in the mid game was just a little bit too solid. I think really, if there's anything to look at in this game, it's how 4Zoomers played in that 25 to 35 minute mark, where there wasn't a flaw in their play style. They were very sturdy. They were very stable. All of their plays made sense and they worked out. Well, Hikori, they really had some bad games on a lot of their key players. Unfortunately, both Artio and Analog, they just weren't set up to win. I think might want to swap up their draft a little bit here. They lost the physical damage game way too hard. In the magic damage game, they never got to actually play. They were so caught up chasing around Mu that they never got to hit that early timing. That's where 4Zoomers just got to walk to theirs.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the one sort of early benefit for Hikori with Vitaly's lane going so well, it really kind of fizzles out as well. That Bloodseeker didn't really get to do much. By the time he has that Rod of Atos sort of picked up, we're already looking at BKBs for the important cores on the 4Zoomers side. So that might be something that Hikori look at before. This is another team that we sort of talk about, ETU and I, where Vitaly needs to be on that playmaker. He needs to be on someone aggressive. In a lot of circumstances, the Bloodseeker does fit that role, but this time, that really just never seemed to develop for them. So that may be another place where they look to maybe make some adjustments to their lineup, get Vitaly more involved, and get him more involved earlier in the match as well.
Yeah, and that's also where Bloodseeker, of course, you are always going to want Bloodseeker versus Pango. And the one fact of the hero is that you have Rupture versus the Pango. You have to make him wait a little bit. But Pangos are so used to playing versus it at this point. Of course, it is supposed to be the hard counter. But I feel like time and time again, a Pango gets ruptured. He's put to this pos 5 role. He's put to this position 4 role, and he's okay with it. He is okay throwing his life away. And that's what 4Zoomers really did well in their draft, getting those secondary playmakers to go in whenever Husky was inundated by that rupture. And then you end up in this position where you're rupturing a Pango that doesn't really care about it, and then the cores start running wild, and Bloodseeker already doesn't provide that much lockdown. I really think Hikori, looking at this Bloodseeker under the microscope, trying to get Vitaly on a better hero, because like we talked about, if Vitaly isn't off to a fantastic start on this Bloodseeker, we saw he finished off the Spirit Vessel so early, and then he walked towards that Atos, and then he crawled towards that BKB. It just felt like he'd had no impact for 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, so multiple points for Hikori to address, and To be honest, maybe a point for Four Zoomers as well. They get that win. It's one-sided a lot of the way through, but as we said in the game itself, felt like maybe they could have finished that one off a little bit faster. But slow and steady wins the race, as the old saying goes, and Four Zoomers do get the win here in game number 1. The question is, will they now be able to swing this into a 2-0 sweep and actually give Hikori their first series loss? Hikori had managed to win or draw in all of their series so far, and they do have a shot at redemption. So we'll see what Game 2 has in store. We're going to be hopping into a bit of a break beforehand, though, but when we return, it'll be Four Zoomers and Hikori facing off once again. So stick around, and we'll be right back.